Hi there, and welcome to a new episode of Worlds Collide, the podcast where we talk about moving abroad. I am your host, Victoria, and I appreciate that you are tuning in today. So, first, I just wanted to mention something that I usually mention in the end of the episode, but I just wanted to say it in the beginning this time. So, if you really like this podcast, then why don't you give it a 5-star rating at wherever you listen to it? This would help me immensely to be more recognized. And so I could get even more listeners, which is a goal that I would love to achieve. Okay, so that about that. And now I just gonna give you a quick introduction to today's episode. It is with the wonderful guest Emily. And talking to her, I thought she was a person to look up to. Yeah, she is working to achieve her career goals. I think it is very impressive. And part of this was also to be working abroad. So that was on the first step, working in Germany. And then later, her second step was Canada for her PhD. Okay, so listen to her story, how she did it. Yeah, here it is. Okay, my guest today is Emily. Hey, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good too. Thanks for being on my podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited about your story. So I saw through the little Reddit post that you sent me that you moved around a little bit. So I wasn't sure how to start or what my first question would be, but I guess just like let's start where you're from originally.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So I'm from the United States. I was born in Washington, D.C., but my dad was in the military, so we moved around a bit. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually moved maybe 5 or 6 times before I was 18 to California, Oregon, Wisconsin, Virginia, if
Oh
you're
wow.
familiar with all those different states.
Oh wow.
But I spent most of my time in like near San Francisco, so about half the
Okay.
time. So that's where I say I'm from. It's my short answer.
Okay, so I was also living there for a long time. Where were you?
In Alameda.
Oh, me too.
No way. Are you serious?
Yeah.
What a small world. That's so,
I
yeah, I
know.
my parents still live there. I went to high school there. That's
Oh,
so
really?
funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you live on the east side or on the west side?
I always get them mixed up, but I lived on the east side, like near Park Street.
Yeah, me
So
too. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, because I know Pearl. I went to Otis Elementary, and so
Oh,
that's
you
where, and
did.
yeah.
Because we always said like when we're gonna stay there, we will send our kids to Otis.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh. Well, it's a great school.
But then we moved away like 4 years ago. But it's such a special place. I don't know, I miss it. It's lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really lovely. It's like it's because it's so fun when and I tell people, "Oh, I'm from an island in the Bay Area." They're like, "Huh?" You know?
Yeah.
So, oh, that's great.
Such a small world. Here I always listen to the NPR radio station, and one of the
Okay.
hosts is actually always saying, "Oh, I forget her name, but I'm calling from Alameda," and I'm always getting really
Oh,
sentimental, you know?
aw. Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. Okay, so okay, so you lived most of the time in California.
Yes, yeah, in Alameda.
And when did you decide that you want to move abroad?
Right. So I guess I forgot one part. I went to university up in Portland, Oregon. So
Ah, okay.
after being 18, I lived in Portland for like 6 years. And then while I was in university, I studied abroad for a summer. So like I went for a few months to Austria, and that was my first time in Europe. And
Uh-huh.
I had I have a friend, and she's part Swedish, and so she was really like, had all these like big goals and like the way that she wanted to live her, like I hadn't met anyone else that wanted to live her life the way that she had, and it's probably because she had a Swedish passport. So she was like, well, I'm just going to
Mm,
move to Sweden and
right.
yada yada yada, do all this. And I was like, well, that's cool. And when I was living in Austria, I went to Munich and I loved it, and I was like, I just kept thinking about how cool it would be to live there. And like, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
just want to be a tourist.
Okay.
And so then after university, I got a job, and then I was like, well, I think I need like something to work towards. And so then my goal was to move abroad and move to Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And I just tried to make that happen for about a year until it did.
Okay, so and how did you manage that? How did you end up there then in the end?
I got lucky. Like I used connections basically. I tried on
Mhm.
my own for a while just to find a job uh,
Right.
in engineering, which is what I studied. And
Mhm.
it was really hard, especially because like I didn't speak German and, they have to
Mhm.
sponsor you. But my first job out of university, that I had a pretty close relationship with them. He was actually German, and so he had studied, like he grew up there, went to university there, and then emigrated to America.
Mhm.
And basically, one of his friends from university ran a similar lab in Germany, and he had told me, "Hey, this is a pretty good connection I have. If you want to go to Europe, it'll probably work out because me and this guy, we have a relationship, but I only want you to seek it out if you're going to do it. Like, I don't want
Yeah,
you to
yeah, yeah.
just try it out, like ask the guy if you're not sure." And so I said,
Sure.
okay, that'll be my plan B. I want to get like a job at a company in a city. And this was like research in the countryside.
Ah,
um,
okay. Mhm.
and so after trying for a while on my own, it was pretty hard. And I even flew out there for one interview, and they kind of didn't treat me very well.
Mhm.
Like never gave me money that they said they would for accommodations. And so I kind of like the wind was taken out of my sails after that. And then I was like,
Yeah.
I'm going to give this connection a go. And it worked out, and it was the best decision. So it,
Okay.
yeah, turned out to be I was so happy with it. Like it's way better than I had imagined.
Okay, and where was it then?
It was in this town called Murnau. It's between Munich and Garmisch,
Mhm.
in southern Germany in
Yeah.
Bavaria. Um, yeah, so there's a big trauma hospital there, and I was working in the biomechanics lab. And my
Ah,
first,
okay.
um, what we kind of agreed to was like a 7-month contract at 20 hours a week. So that's what I moved there for.
Mhm.
And then as time went on, and I loved it, and I loved living there, I just kept like I went to full time, and then I just kept kind of extending it for 2 years. I lived there.
Okay, do you remember what kind of visa that was?
It was just a work visa.
A
It
work
was just,
visa, but like a
yeah,
limited kinda work visa
it was
for
dependent on my contract. It was dependent on my contract. So it was tied to the job. Yeah.
Mhm.
So every time my contract was coming up, I had to get a new one and then renew my Aufenthaltstitel or whatever.
Uh-huh. And did
Um,
you always have to, like, fly back to the US to get your
no,
papers, or did you just had to go to the
no.
embassy somewhere, or
No, actually, I never had to go to the embassy. I just had to go to like the German registration office
Mhm.
and show them my new contract, and then they would give me a new like resident permit or work
Okay, I
permit.
see.
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't sound so complicated like it is in the US, where you always have to go to the American embassy
Oh,
to
okay.
go to get, like, your legal status.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I don't know. I mean, it was a lot of paperwork before I went, but then I think
Mhm.
once you're there, extending it was easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how was then, living in that small town for you in Germany?
It was very idyllic. It's in the foothills of the Alps, so it's
Uh-huh.
just this beautiful. They call it Das Blaue Land, um, like the blue land, and there were all
Mhm.
these artists that lived there, and it's just like rolling green hills of cows, and it's very like it's funny because it's like I think when Americans think of Germany, they think of Bavaria, where it's very
Right,
like
exactly.
conservative and different, but like I got to live with I got to live in that. I was the only native English speaker in my workplace.
Mhm.
Like the nature was amazing. It was an hour train to Munich.
Okay, that's not so bad.
No, yeah, not so bad. So I could go to like concerts if I wanted to or
Mhm.
something. I went from like living in Portland and having this amazing group of friends and um, a real community there to then go to Murnau where nobody is like me culturally, you know.
Right.
And so there was definitely, but like growing up, I think moving prepared me pretty well that you just
Mm,
expect there's going to be an adaptation period where
I
things are
see.
going to be hard and you'll be kind of lonely, but you kind of just get through it and you do
Mm-hmm.
activities and things come with time. And so my coworkers were great. Like, I think once I started to learn German, it helped because
Yeah.
they weren't keen on speaking English all the time.
Mm. How was it for you to learn German? Did they send you to like a classes or?
No, I'd thought about going, like I took one community college course before
Mm-hmm.
moving so
Ah,
I could
uh-huh.
like, you know, count to 10 and say my name and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but honestly, I couldn't put together many sentences. Like it was, especially
Yeah.
they're all speaking like dialect Bavarian.
Yeah,
Um,
especially there. Mm-hmm.
yeah, but basically I was just immersed. Like I was like, and I kind of threw myself into that probably as a way to like distract myself from having
Mm-hmm.
moved. My coworkers were super helpful, like very patient with me and answered all my questions. I'd be like, what does this word mean? How do you say this? Why do you say this? So they were super
Uh-huh.
helpful. And then just being immersed, and I kind of just like did it by the seat of my pants. And by the end, I was pretty conversationally fluent, which is really
Okay.
cool. But, and then I had a workbook from the class I had taken that I would do at night sometimes. But I had tried to like sign up for courses, but they were only available for like people that were there as for refugee status, or it was
Ah,
just
yeah.
super expensive. So I was like, I'll just learn on the streets.
Okay. And your coworkers, were they all very comfortable in speaking English?
Yeah, pretty comfortable, I'd say. Like, yeah, I guess they were definitely all like B2 level.
Okay.
Um, but I
They could speak, but they were not always very comfortable.
Yeah, they definitely preferred. They could say,
Mm.
yeah, they could say what they wanted, but like sometimes things wouldn't come out just right.
Yeah, yeah.
And like meetings, it wasn't an English lab. Like meetings were in German, lunches in
Mhm.
German, cake and coffee breaks were in German. So
Yeah.
yeah. So,
You had cake and coffee breaks.
oh yeah, that was a great part to get used to. It wasn't every day, but well, coffee breaks were every day. It's like, you
Yeah.
know, at 10, everybody kind of goes into the kitchen and has a coffee, and then anytime someone gets a publication, it's someone's birthday, someone's has a year anniversary of working
Okay.
there, someone brings in cake, and then you go and sit for an hour and have cake, and
Oh,
it's
wow,
like
that's a
kind of
long
sacred.
break.
Yeah, it was awesome.
But I feel they do that here in the US too. I mean, at least
Oh,
when you
really?
watch whatever, if you watch like TV and then they're like, oh yeah, somebody has a birthday, we're gonna have like
Yeah.
coffee and cupcakes and whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I think people will bring in like pastries and stuff, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, did the company help you to find a place to live?
Yeah, well, the first, so they had staff housing that was, they
Ah.
either had like apartments or a thing called a Wohnheim that's kind of like a dormitory.
Hmm.
And nothing was available for the first month that I lived there. So I lived in like a kind of like a bed and breakfast in a nearby village
Sure.
for the first month. And then I
Hmm.
moved into the Wohnheim, which was the dormitory. So it had a shared kitchen, shared bathroom. Um, and I could have moved into an apartment when one was available, which would probably be in a
Hmm.
few months, but it was so cheap at the Wohnheim. It was like 130 euros a month.
Oh wow, super cheap. Hmm.
And I was like, you know, I didn't have Wi-Fi or anything, and I was like, you know, I'm not here to like sit at home all the time. I'm here to like explore and be out and about. And so
Hmm.
I lived there for 2 years, and
Oh
I never
wow.
moved into a full apartment.
Did you have a shared room or?
No, I had my own room. So
Okay.
it was, I'm not good with like square meters or anything, but it was a decent sized room with a
Hmm.
single bed and a sink. Um,
Okay, so almost like university style
yeah,
living.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
It felt like, and even though the people that would stay in that building were always, they were either like nurses that had a long night shift or
Ah.
maybe visiting doctors, or like sometimes we'd have American interns from Northwest or Northeastern University.
Uh-huh.
So they would live there for like 4 months, or German students doing their master's program. Like
Okay.
they'd come for 4 months. So it would either be pretty empty or there would be other like young people in the kitchen making dinner,
Okay,
which was
so
nice.
it was also easier for you to make friends or like have like a social circle then within that Wohnheim?
When there were people there, yeah. Like
Yeah,
when we
okay.
had visiting students, we could definitely hang out in the kitchen, and it was really nice because like because it's a hospital, a big hospital, there's a lot of workers and a lot of the people in the village or
Mhm.
town worked there. They had, different sport programs every day. We could go to the sauna one day a week.
Mhm.
Um, and so I was doing like the fitness gymnastics and indoor soccer every week. And so, like, just kind of getting into that community, it was really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
So I really leaned on the work, I think,
So,
there.
okay, so you also stayed very active to find like a
Yeah.
social, like a group or something. So you wouldn't be like lonely all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I even so, like I'm a pretty social person. And so,
Uh-huh.
and especially with moving, I just kind of knew that that's what you have to do to put yourself out there. But even so, it was the most time I'd ever spent alone. Because
Ah.
before I'd lived with my former boyfriend within a house of
Mhm.
our friends, and so that was kind of a cool experience too, just to like, because I hadn't really gotten to know myself as an adult in that way,
Uh-huh. Okay.
So yeah.
Can I ask you how old you were when you moved to Germany?
It was 2017, so I was 23.
Yeah, so you were,
Yeah.
yeah, just
I
also
was pretty young. Yeah.
pretty young, new adult kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like launched into the world.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
um,
And did you miss anything or what? No, actually, no. Because I always ask the question, what do you really miss? But
okay.
I want to phrase it more. What did you really like?
Okay. Um, I think some of the things I liked had to do with like living specifically there and how rural and beautiful it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it like just being able to take a train to go hike in the Alps on my own and go on adventures like that was really special and empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the food felt really high quality, like picking up really well baked little buns, and like I ate more bread and butter and cheese there than ever before, and I lost weight. Like,
Okay.
and just like the simplicity of the life there. Like I eventually joined a women's soccer league in the
Mm-hmm.
area, and so I would just like bike to soccer, past the like pastures of horses. It was just so special, and
It sounds
in the
so
soccer,
picturesque.
it was yeah, it was really beautiful. So I really liked that, and then also I traveled quite a bit as well, and the vacation time was quite generous. And if you
Okay, right.
worked overtime, so I like in Portland, I'd worked at kind of like a startup environment. So I was used
Mm-hmm.
to like, working 50 hours a week and
Oh, sure.
throwing myself into that. So I would kind of work extra in
Mm-hmm.
Germany, and then your overtime you can use as vacation. And so
Right.
I would like fly to Italy for 4 days or take the train down to northern Italy. And um, I traveled to like so many countries. And so being at a kind of like a launch pad for that was also really, really cool. And really
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I was really fortunate to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in comparison to the US, the countries are so small
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Europe, and every country is so different. I
Hmm.
mean, especially if you just drive whatever 10 hours north, it's
Right.
you're at the sea, and then you're in the Alps anyway, so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Whereas in the States, you drive 10 hours and you're could be still in the same state.
Yeah, like here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, depending where you are.
Yeah.
Um, and so why did you choose then to move away?
Good question. I really struggled with that too at the time. Like, so when I got this job, I had told myself, like, I promised myself before I moved that after 2 years, I was gonna kind of try to elevate myself career wise. So I was
Mhm.
either going to get a different job or, if try to find something different within there. But like, I didn't want to, like, career wise, I just didn't want to like get comfortable and then become stagnant and then
Mhm.
you know, 8 or 10 years later be like, it felt like I'd missed out on kind of
Right. Okay.
moving up, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's like a pretty American thing
I
for
understand
careers.
it though. Yeah, but you
Yeah.
want to just achieve more for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be stagnant, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 years came and I was like so involved and so happy. But I could tell that at work wise, I was kind of plateauing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had learned a ton being there and really challenged myself and done all these things, but I could tell that the returns were kind of diminishing. So then I was like, well, do I stay in Europe? Do I go back to America?
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of wrestling with that. And I was like, well, I was, and then I was 25 and I was like, I think I want to start meeting more people my age, like, unless, and I was thinking about dating and stuff. And I was like, unless I meet a lovely German farm boy who I really connect with, like it's in the villages like that, like the pickings are slim
Uh-huh.
or everybody's already together since they're 12 or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
So I was like, if I stay in Europe, I want to go to a city and like be around more people in a similar part of life as me.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, but then I'd also like my extended family is really big. Like my mom has
Mm-hmm.
8 brothers and sisters, and I
Oh wow.
grew up
Mm-hmm.
being really close with my cousins. And I just noticed that I kind of missed seeing them every year and like
Uh-huh.
going to weddings and not having to fly across an ocean. And
Mm-hmm.
I basically had a lot of time to think about like what I wanted my life to look like. And I was like, well, then I was like, do I want to? And my boss who got me the job, he was always really good about this. He was such a good mentor, but he always said, Emily, like when you move to Europe, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of. But the longer you stay, the more likely it is you'll never leave. And
Uh-huh.
that's just important to think about when you want to think about your life, because he immigrated to America and I don't think he regretted it. He has an amazing family and life, but to see his mom, he had to fly back to Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and be there for a month. And I was like, I think I don't want to do that with my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think although like there's so many things a life overseas has to offer, I was like, that's something I want to choose first.
Okay.
So then I was looking for jobs in America, and yeah, so that's why I left, I guess.
Okay. But you just said you were looking for jobs in America. That was like totally fine for you, was not like, oh, I cannot go back to the United States. I have to go somewhere
Well,
else.
no, you're right. It actually wasn't fine because I was still a little bit in denial. So I was actually, even though I'd had this on my mind and been thinking about it, I was
Mm-hmm.
actually still looking for jobs like in Germany, the Netherlands, and then I think I was just looking at like job boards in my field.
Yeah.
And then I kind of let the posting make the decision for me, because I saw a PhD position in Vancouver, Canada, and I was like, I don't want to get my PhD. No,
Mm-hmm.
but I kept the tab open and then I kept thinking about it. And I was like, well, I really like the Pacific Northwest. And I felt like, I'm really like grateful and proud to be from the United States, but
Mm-hmm.
moving back just kind of felt like giving up on,
Yeah, I know exactly what
looking
you
for
mean. Yeah.
somewhere better.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, well, Canada is such a cool compromise because it's closer to my family. It's a two
Right.
hour flight
Mm-hmm.
from them, but it's still abroad, it's still
It's
another
still a
country.
different country. Yes.
And then here I am now, and I ended up convincing myself that getting a PhD wasn't a bad idea. And
Okay.
now I've been in Vancouver for 5 years,
Okay. 5 years. Okay,
almost
that's
five
a long
years.
time.
Well, 4.5, but yeah,
Okay. And so as an outsider, I think like sure the US and Canada are so close and also they speak the
yeah,
same language and um so I don't think there are a lot of differences, but
no,
probably like for you there must be a few more, like
a
some
few.
things that are different.
Yeah, I didn't know that much. I mean, I think most Americans don't know that much about Canada unless they live close to the border. And I didn't. I think I was hoping that it would be more European,
Uh,
but it's not. But there's a few differences. Like I think, the way that the government is and the healthcare
right.
is
Mm-hmm.
different. It feels there's a little bit more British influence. They have their own version of
You're
English.
from the Commonwealth.
Yeah. And then I think like the way the like culture and society is a little bit different. I think it's pretty subtle. Like you wouldn't notice it right away,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit more. And maybe it's the way that the structure of society is, but it feels a little bit more like we than in America
Uh-huh.
sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I only think of architecture, and then I think the influence is
Mm.
more European because maybe from the French, because they have like more
Oh,
influence from
okay.
the French. I
Yeah.
mean, just I guess because they also speak in some
Yeah.
areas French, right?
No, it could be. And I think if I lived in Eastern Canada, my experience would be a lot different. Like
Right.
because there's in British Columbia, like there's not a lot of French. It feels very,
Yeah.
Western.
Yeah.
But I think I'd hoped that, and I had bigger dreams of learning more French when I first moved here, but I haven't
Yeah.
done that much.
Uh-huh. I like always when I looked at the pictures from Vancouver.
Hmm.
So I have never been there. I only like
Oh, okay.
looked at pictures, but it always reminded me of San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. A
Because
little
of the
bit.
architecture, because they also have Victorian housing.
They do. Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's their oldest city on the West Coast, right? So it's
Okay.
kind of like San Francisco. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's a nice city when it's not gray and raining, which it has been a lot
Mm,
recently.
mm. But how was it for you then there to settle in?
It was good. It was funny because I had moved straight from, I was American, but I'd moved from somewhere else to Canada. And I started a grad school program. So that was a
Mm-hmm.
great way to meet people. A lot of the people that were starting, they were like, well, they're my friends now. But when I first met them, they were like fresh out of university, Canadian, just going to their PhD right away. And so that was a little bit
Mm-hmm.
different. Like I kind of felt like the older
Yeah.
student for having worked and
Mm,
stuff before going back. But what was nice, so I moved into like a shared house. And one of the girls that moved in at the same time as me, she was American,
okay.
or she is American. She's my friend. But she had just been living in Uganda for a few years. And so we both had this kind of like cool connection of,
Mm-hmm.
moving to Canada as Americans, but not from America. And so we really connected over that, and
Right.
we have a lot of shared interests. So, but settling in here, I'd say it half felt just like coming home, but then it was still having to navigate the study permit and getting a bank account and like the things that are, subtly different here. But everything's in English, so it's like,
Okay.
a lot easier.
Yeah, so I was just wondering that is it way back easier because
Yeah,
you're
definitely
familiar with the
easier.
language.
Definitely
Yeah.
easier. And then this with the study permit, it was like, it was good for 4 years. So I just didn't have to think about it.
Was it also a big difference than living in a house versus big dormitory?
Yeah, definitely. So the housing market in Vancouver can be pretty tough, like competitive and then
Hmm.
expensive. And as a student, I knew I wasn't going to be making a lot of money, but I wanted to live in a shared place to meet people,
Hmm.
basically. Um, but it was fine. Like I'd done it before in Portland. The thing that kind of changed it was COVID, because COVID happened 6 months after I
Hmm.
moved here.
Okay.
So I feel lucky. Like I feel like I did have enough time to make some friends first. Um, but like going from when COVID happened and all of a sudden people had to work from home,
Right.
my housing situation was not really, it was fine to live, but like it wasn't really a great work from home place.
Okay.
There just wasn't enough space, and it was more of like a student house. So
Hmm.
I felt like I outgrew that. But it was fun. It was like nice to have the little community.
Okay. What did you then really like about Canada?
Yeah, I really like the nature is just unparalleled.
Hmm.
And just how big of a country it is. Like I had no idea it's the second biggest country in the world,
Yeah.
which is just like classic
Right.
American. um, so that's really special. And it's, at least in Vancouver, it's really like being in the outdoors and access to nature is pretty integrated in like what a lot of people like to do here, which is cool. Um, I think a lot of the things I like about it are that it's quite similar to where I'm from,
Mm-hmm.
to the United States. Um, so those things are like one of the things I missed about Germany is when I was in Germany, it was so cool. I could go hiking and go to huts and stuff. But something I'd done a lot in Portland is like um, just go drive, like just go drive on a road trip and you can get out to the middle of nowhere and
Right.
put down a tent and it's fine. And you can't do that as much, I think, it's more populated in Europe
I think
or more dense
um, it's more dense, but I'm also not sure if you can just wild
if
camp,
you're allowed
right? You're
to.
allowed to. Maybe
Yeah,
you have to ask the property owner if it's okay to like set up a tent.
right,
But I think there is
right.
not that wild camping is not allowed.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean
I think
also like very densely populated. So I mean like you cannot just go into the great open, you know? I mean there will be
right,
like a next
right.
town right there.
Right, right, exactly. Which is so cool. You know, you can go on hiking trips and get a gelato halfway
Um,
through, but like, but I actually really liked that, but I think I missed the like ruggedness of the
mhm.
nature out
Yeah.
here. But honestly, I'm trying to think like, I don't know that there's anything. I mean, I really like living here, but I'm trying to think if there's anything like special. I like living here and I think I like it feels a little bit more calm and stable than the United States. And
Mhm. Would you go back though?
to the United States?
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna finish my PhD soon, and so
Okay.
I'm actually looking for jobs in the Bay Area. Um,
Mhm.
but not because I want to go back there forever. Like
Okay.
I'd like to live there. I've never lived there as an adult. I think it'd be pretty fun.
Mhm.
It'd be nice to live near my parents as an adult for a few years. And maybe,
Yeah.
you know, everything could change in life. So I don't know what's going to happen, but like I'm not moving there with the intention to stay. And now
Right.
I'm a permanent resident of Canada, so I got that last year, which is really nice.
Ah,
Um,
okay. Even as a student or like a PhD, I mean still student visa, I assume with a PhD,
mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Or
so you when you become so actually my PhD, I'm not done, but all my years studying and stuff didn't really count at all towards my application. Like it does like work during school doesn't count. So
uh-huh.
um but yeah, as soon as I got permanent residency, my study permit was like canceled. So now study permit doesn't exist, but I
Okay.
have like my green card basically.
Sure, sure.
And my boyfriend's Canadian, and we're talking about going down to the Bay Area together. And I know that he
Mhm.
wants to come back here someday, and I'd like that
Mhm.
too. So I think, you know, if I could pick and choose my life, it would be go down to the Bay for a bit, and probably come back to Canada someday. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
like,
mean, maybe we're gonna be neighbors because we also wanna we're thinking about moving back to the Bay Area.
oh
So
really? Oh, that's funny.
yeah.
Where do you live now, if you don't mind me
I'm in
asking?
Austin.
Oh, cool. Okay.
In Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here it's all fine,
Right.
but it's still Texas,
Yeah.
so and it's too hot.
Yeah.
I cannot get to the heat.
Yeah. I feel like the
It's too
Bay,
much.
then like the Bay is so temperate, but it still feels like there's seasons, which is nice, you know?
There are seasons and there's always a breeze.
Yeah. 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 I
Yeah,
can
and I
see
mean if you want it colder, you just go to San Francisco, you'll be
it.
freezing.
True. Then you'll need a jacket.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll both have to let each other know if it happens.
Yeah. So if you would meet anybody and they would ask you about moving to Canada, what would you recommend?
I would recommend if you're thinking about getting a permanent residency, just like start the process way sooner than you think you need to because it takes a long time. um,
Okay.
and I'd say, you know, get a good jacket, like get a good waterproof jacket and a jacket for cold. Um, and then I'd also say, no matter where you are, like it's probably a good idea to get ready to be more involved in like winter activities. So,
Mm.
you know, whether it's like downhill skiing or cross country skiing or just like things in the snow, like most of Canada will have snow in the winter and it
Mhm.
makes I'm not like, I'm not as much of a homebody, but I think otherwise you'd just be cooped up a lot of the time if you're avoiding bad weather. So
Okay,
you kind of have
sure.
to
Sure.
get ready for the bad weather.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I didn't ask you that because I think as a student, it's always easy to meet people.
Mhm.
But are Canadians very open to meet other people from abroad, or do
Yeah.
you think they're like more um, to themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I can only talk about the ones that I've met here. And
Yeah.
honestly, most of the ones that I've met here are not from Vancouver. So I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe this is something they just say here, but I think in Vancouver, people can be a little colder, like kind of just
Oh.
keep to their own groups. They don't go out to meet other
Mm-hmm.
people really. They go out to like spend time with their own friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my boyfriend is from this area, and I've, through
Uh-huh.
dating him, I've like penetrated his group of friends.
Sure.
And a lot of them are like met in university here, but they don't seem to like meet a lot of new people. You know what I mean? And I think Vancouver has a
Uh-huh.
lot of like more transient, like international people or students, and I think
Yeah.
they kind of hang out with each other. So I don't know, like they're very nice and friendly, but I think it might be more of like a little bit more surface level sometimes. Like if you really are going to be
Right.
friends, it might take a while to get in there.
But I think also maybe that is like thing in general. I mean, for people who always lived at the same place and they
Yeah,
have their
true.
social circle established,
Yeah,
they don't need to be as outgoing. But if there's for example, another Canadian that you just mentioned who moved there from Toronto and is
exactly.
by himself, then it's a different story, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think you're right. And then also if I lived somewhere my whole life and all these new people that I met were leaving
Mm.
after a year or two, I'd probably be kind of frustrated. So
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, I want to have a friend that stays a little bit longer.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think I'm the same. And then also like you don't want to be the person that says like, "Hey, I'm new. I'm desperate. I need new friends."
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, that's actually so funny because in just like as an example, when I moved to Germany for the first few months, nobody really invited me to do anything, and it took a
Uh-huh.
while to like start going for beers after work and stuff. And then later when I got to know my coworkers, and there was one new German guy that started at the same time as me, and
Yeah.
he was always inviting people to do stuff, and
Oh.
I was like, well, I was like, no, like I feel like in America, when someone's new, a lot of the time it's like, hey, you're new. I'll show you this. Like, I'll take you around. You should go do this.
Mhm.
And then when I said this to my coworker, I was like, yeah, I was like, nobody likes me, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, well, no, you're new. You're the one that needs friends. You're the one that's supposed to be like, hey, let's go do this. Let's go do this. So it was totally
Okay,
switched to how I was used
okay,
to.
so expected to have you were expected to make the effort,
Yeah.
not the other way
Yeah,
around.
which kind of makes sense, but
Yeah, but I mean, I also like did hear because everybody is like kind of taking care of you, when
mm-hmm.
you're the only one that is new.
Yeah,
And there it's like, okay, so they expect the other way around.
it seemed like it, but nobody clued me in
Mm.
on that.
Oh,
Yeah, but it's
yes,
okay.
but I studied in the south of Germany, and I
Oh, okay.
remember in that area where I was, the people from there were also they kept to themselves.
Yeah.
It was like just we said like the people who are from there, they keep in their own circle.
Mhm.
They're not very outgoing. I never met anybody or like I never made a friend that was from that region. Like all the
Oh,
friends
okay.
I made, they were from anywhere else. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
all the ones who I studied with.
Which makes a lot of
But
sense, like,
yeah, it makes a lot of sense, exactly. And especially if it's like a university city, everybody who is there, they know, okay, it's just the students, they come and
right.
go.
Right, totally.
Yeah, and especially like when you are like in a small town, especially in
Yeah.
Bavaria,
Yeah, I think
it's
it's different. Yeah, maybe that's just a human thing, like I don't,
yeah.
because it makes sense here too.
Do you remember the size of the town, the population?
It was about 10,000 people.
Oh yeah, it's tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very small. But they still had like fine public transportation there.
Within the city, not really. There was like a bus a few times a day, but it was
Okay,
on,
but you just said you couldn't take the train.
yeah, it was on, there was, it had one of the major like rail stops. So they had trains
Yeah,
every hour to Munich, which is great. And then every hour down to Garmisch in Austria.
yeah,
So that was a
yeah.
savior.
I've never been to Garmisch, but my cousin lives in Garmisch.
Oh, really? Okay. It's really pretty. And all the buildings have like the painted murals on them. It's nice.
Yeah, it's like how everybody imagines Germany,
Yes,
right?
yeah, definitely. But it's funny, there's a big like American military presence there. So there's always like some Americans around, which is kind of funny. But
Yeah, the whole South, right?
yeah.
I mean, not all, but like most of the stations there are in the South.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true, actually.
I mean, I don't know why they chose that, but
Yeah. Hmm.
all right. I think I don't have any more questions.
Well, it was really nice talking to you.
Yeah, it was really nice to meet you. Thank you for sharing your experience.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was
And
nice to be asked about.
I hope you could refresh your memory a little bit because it's been such a long time,
It
right?
has, yeah. I mean, I love talking about being there. Like, thinking about it just makes me smile. So it's nice to have an excuse to ramble on about.
Yeah, I mean, I was really happy that you reached out to me when I posted that on Reddit.
Yeah, it was a cool
Yeah.
opportunity. It's a cool podcast you
Yeah.
do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was today's episode with Emily. So I hope I didn't step on anybody's toes when I said that the US and Canada are very similar. Or maybe I made an unknowledgeable comment about it. Sorry, I didn't mean it. Well, in case you're still upset about it, then please reach out to me directly, please, so I can clarify my point of view to you. But also, reach out to me if you are interested in being a guest on the show. At the moment, I'm actively looking for new ones. So if you want to share your story here, please reach out to me at worldscollide123pod@gmail.com. Or you can also find me on Instagram at worldscollidepod. It's just one word. And then there's also Threads. And a TikTok is there too. And then, as I said earlier, if you like this podcast, then please give it a 5-star review wherever you listen to it. And I don't want to forget about it because sometimes I do not mention it, but thank you for the music. Search Quarando from Pixabay. Yeah, and then I hope you tune in again for the next episode. Until then, bye.